biggest thing for your green projects is to make sure that you have enough time to do your gardening projects, and that means planning. Every one of the books has a big section on planning what you're going to do and what you're going to have for your garden. And so if you're doing vegetable gardening, you need to talk to your family. What kind of food do you guys like to eat? What kind of vegetables do we want to have? And then when you look at your gardening stuff, some stuff needs to be planted from seed in the garden, and other stuff you'll need to go buy a transplant. This is what we call a transplant. Does anybody know what that is? See the little roots here? Do you know what this is, Addison?
Kinda,
Yeah. Well, I'll help you. You know, there's different families of vegetables, and this is in the cucurbit family, which basically is a family that has squash and pumpkins and melons and cantaloupe and cucumbers and zucchini. This is actually a winter squash transplant. And this is the soilless mix that we started it in. And you notice there's two little plants in here. So we have two seeds that we started in here. And then we'll put this into the soil out in the field. So this is something that you need to plan ahead. It takes about 120 days in order to make this to the point where you have the squash that you can eat. And normally most people want these to have, they're called winter squash, acorn squash, so that you can time it. Most people don't start these in April when they put their garden out, or early May. We wait until like June or July. So that's planning. You know, some people might not like acorn squash. Maybe you like tomatoes, right? So tomatoes, you know, a lot of people don't grow their own plants. They buy a plant from a greenhouse that's already been started. This is a pink variety. It's called an heirloom variety. So you got to decide what you want to plant. Now, when it comes to flower gardening, it's the same basic principle. What kind of flowers do you want? Do you want flowers that you can cut and take in the house? Like this? This is a zinnia. We just started picking these, and we have them in a bouquet here. And I'll take out these extra two that are going to wilt really bad. But here, this is a bouquet or a vase of flowers that we picked that you can put in your house. So that's all different kinds of flowers. Maybe you like snapdragons, or maybe you like these pretty dahlias that we have in here, or maybe you just like stuff that smells. On the side here, that's basil. It's a little wilted because it didn't condition or cut very nicely, but it's really nice to add sometimes herbs or other vegetables to your flower arrangement. So we just plan ahead and decide that. Some flowers are really good for just the leaves. This is a coleus here. So we planned ahead. Garrett should know what these are because I'm pretty sure you had these on your deck last year, right, Garrett? It's a coleus. And they come in all these different cool colors. You see this one here? It's kind of pink and red. So that's called planning. And every one of the books has a section on that. And it doesn't matter what project you're doing, you all have a planning section. And in your book also, it talks about mapping out your garden, you know, and it can just be something really simple, like this row, I'm gonna put some tomatoes. And this row here, we're going to, on the outside of the garden, we're gonna put a couple rows of sweet corn, because everybody likes sweet corn. So you would start those from seed. And then, you know, you need to know if you're doing your vegetables, you can even do them in a container like this and grow vegetables. Now, these are all flowers that are in here. I didn't have any vegetables in pots yet. But if you don't have a very good place in your garden, you can actually do containers as long as you have a sunny spot, maybe on your deck or around your house someplace. And you use a good soilless mix inside, which is what this is. It's a soilless mix. You just don't go outside and dig up dirt from the yard, okay? This is a soilless mix, and it's great for containers because it doesn't get real hard. So the planning section, you all should be able to fill that out in your garden. And spacing comes along with that, whether it's flowers or vegetables or anything, you need to know how far apart they are. So that makes a difference. If I was planting tomatoes, I don't want to plant, let's pretend for a second this is a tomato plant. I don't want to plant it 3 inches from another tomato plant because it doesn't have enough room to grow. Same thing with flowers. And on your seed packet, which I forgot to bring one of those, or on the little tag that comes with your flowers, it'll tell you how far apart to space them. Now, another thing for all of the flowers and a few vegetables, but mainly just flowers, it's called pinching. It's on page 24 in your book. So if you have the How Does Your Garden Grow book, if you turn to page 24, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's called pinching with a P. And this plant, like I said, was a coleus. Now, when we plant our coleus in the spring, when it's just small little tender stem, right? And we take pinching is when you move the growing points. So this part right here at the top, we'll just break it off. And what happens then is it forces these little shoots to come out, and it gets bushier then. So instead of having just one single stalk, now you're gonna have a really bushy plant. So instead of it just being like one single thing like we have, these little side shoots are gonna grow, and it'll have a nice bushy plant. And that's really important when you're doing things in containers like this. See how tall this is compared to everything else? If we pinch the top out, it'll break all these buds on the side and it'll be a nice and bushy. So that's pinching. Another thing with flowers is called deadheading. See this flower right here? See how it's kind of dead? That's what it looked like when it was flowering. So when the blue flower, this is a bachelor button, is done flowering, it looks like this. But if I take these off, and you can use a scissor or you can use your fingers. These are really hard. You can use pruners. That's a pruner. They're really good to cut right above a leaf, down a little bit further. And then that also, when you take those old flower buds off, it increases it to make new flower buds. Now don't get confused, this one just hasn't opened yet, okay? This is what it looks like when it's open. And this is what it looks like when it's past open and it's starting to die, which is called senescence. And all these petals are gonna fall off and it's gonna look like this, okay? And then we'll deadhead that back. And actually by removing those, it encourages them to flower more. So we pinch to take the top out to make it bushy, and we deadhead or take the old flowers off so it continues to flower. And that's very important if you're doing container flowers. Does anybody have a specific question in your book or your project, besides rockets, we'll get to that in a second, about your gardening or flowers project? If you have a question, just unmute and ask me. Addison, you have a question?
Should you pinch off sweet potato vines?
No, probably not. You can,
Like the
but a vine than a flower. Because if it's one single vine and it's getting long and you want it to be fuller, if you pinch the end about this far back, right above a leaf, it'll make it send out more branches. So it gets a little prettier then. Well, because I wasn't thinking sweet potato vine flowers, I was thinking sweet potatoes. You realize that sweet potato vine is just a non-tuber producing, it doesn't make the potatoes, but it's the same family of plants that just make them prettier for flowers. So when you first asked, I thought you were talking about the actual sweet potato. So yes, you may do that. That will be good. But okay. Timing is everything. So if you wait too long, like say you have judging and you want it to look really nice, you need to make sure that you plant your flowers in your containers at least a month before you're judging, or you want it to be looking, because it takes a while to fill it in. Something that helps stuff grow really well also is fertilizer. This is Osmocote. It's what we call a slow release fertilizer, and it's a little easier to use in a pot or in flower bed. You're less likely to burn your plants off if you use something like this. Make sure that you wash your hands really good when you're done and don't touch your face, or have your mom or dad help you with it. But this is what it looks like. I don't know if y'all can see this. It's like little balls. And sometimes in flowers that you buy, or hanging baskets that you buy in from a florist or a garden center, you'll already have these in here. And what happens is they swell up when the water hits them, and they slowly release fertilizer over time. So there's a little scoop that comes in here. And on the back of everything like this that you use, you need to have your parents help you read the instructions here, and it'll tell you exactly how much to put in here. So like this, it can be used for all your vegetables, and it can also be used for trees and shrubs and your flowers or bedding transplants, and that's what this would be considered, a bedding transplant. Any vegetable transplant or flowers that are already ready to go and be transplanted or moved out into the soil. Very good question. Olivia, do you have any questions about your project?
What would be a good leadership or citizenship activity?
For gardening? Well, that one is really pretty easy. If you're raising vegetables or even flowers, a good citizenship thing to do would be to share your flowers or your vegetables that you harvest with maybe a nursing home, or maybe someone in your neighborhood. Maybe you have some elderly relatives or people who are neighbors that maybe don't have the opportunity to go outside and garden. You could take them a bunch of flowers. If you're doing flowers, you could take them some of your produce and share it with them. Or if you are able to with your family members, you could even do some canning and freezing. This is strawberry jam. Everybody loves a good jar of strawberry jam. So that's a good citizenship activity. You could also donate extra plants. Maybe you started a whole packet of marigolds and mom says, yeah, no, that's enough. We don't need all those marigolds. Maybe you could go plant some of them in a basket and give it to someone at a school, nursing home. Maybe help make a beautification project for your fair if you're having a fair program at your fair this year. And so for leadership, though, one of the easiest things to do is just to teach a friend something that you've learned in your flower project or your gardening project. Leadership is a lot about sharing what we know with others, and also doing a demonstration, even if it's just an online demonstration, just about something in your project too. That's an important thing you can do too. Another thing you can do for leadership is to encourage maybe one of your friends to join 4-H. Maybe someone, once we get back to camping, maybe they've never been to 4-H camp, maybe you could encourage them to go to camp with you or something like that too. So those are all really good leadership activities too. And when you're doing leadership activities, sometimes you don't have to, it doesn't have to be something somebody else has already done. You can come up with any idea you like, anything that you like to do. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Garrett, do you have any questions?
No.
All right, good job. Jacob, are you learning anything? Jacob? You know what, Jacob? Even though we're not talking about rockets, even though you kind of got in the wrong one, you can still use this as part of your leadership and other activities too. Because part of learning about other things is good 4-H stuff too.
In fact, this one actually gave me an idea for part of my rocket.
I did?
Like a plant rocket.
A plant rocket.
That's cool. Another thing too, the rocket project, especially the first one where you use a pop bottle, that's a really good nature type project too, because it's about recycling and using things over again.
Yeah.
And that's a good
I heard
gardening.
all of those before.
Yep, that's really good. Did any of you guys do this activity? Do you know what this is?
What?
Do you guys tell what this is?
No, I can't.
A soil
Huh?
jar. A soil jar.
That's a soil jar. That's right. And I think in all of these project books for the gardening project, except for the canning one, it's on page 41 in How Does Your Garden Grow project. See there? You guys have that page? This is really an easy thing to do. Before we came, I just went out to my flower garden by my house. I took a jar and I used my shovel. This is a really good sized shovel. This is a trowel, a gardening trowel. I just scooped up a good scoop of my soil and I put it in the jar and I filled it with water. Put just a little bit of dishwasher detergent in it. Or you could use just a little bit of laundry soap or just one drop of dishwashing liquid like Dawn or something. Then you shake it really good and let it sit and it'll settle. Do you know what's in the bottom? What comes out first? Do you know? It'll settle. Go ahead.
Is it dirt?
It is soil. That's right. The heaviest soil comes down to the bottom first, and this is sand. And sometimes there's some rocks. There's a few rocks in the bottom. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it? It's kind of. Is it focusing on it? Kind of.
Yeah, I see.
Yes. All right. So see, there's rocks in the bottom, and then if you have a sandy soil, the sand will come down next. We don't have a lot of sand in the soil that we have at our house, but there is a little bit. And then you also have organic matter, which basically is all your dead branches and leaves and stuff that decompose that's in your soil. And then you'll have silt. And silt is the real fine stuff that clay is made up of. And so that's what this is. And it takes the longest to settle. So see how the water is really dirty still? If I let this sit still for overnight, this should be pretty clear on top. And then you'll have a little layer of clay here, which is already starting to form. See the lighter layer, the silt? And then you should be able, if you have sand, you'll see the sand down at the bottom. Do you know why the sand goes to the bottom?
Because the liquid can go through it faster than any other type of dirt.
That's pretty good. And it comes down faster because it's bigger, right? Just like the rocks. The rocks go to the bottom, they're bigger too. So why do you think this is important? What does this help you do? Do you know?
I don't.
It helps you to determine what type of soil you have. The faster it settles down, the faster the water drains through your soil. So that means that you would have a lot more sand in it. If it takes a long time, like this is, it means you have a more clay soil. Oopsie. Sorry. I fell. So clay soils are really hard and the water doesn't get through them as easily. And it's harder for the air. Did you know that plants need air in their roots? It's harder for the air to get into the roots when it has a lot of clay. So you can add stuff to the soil. A lot of the stuff that we would add to the soil, like say you have a new garden spot that you guys want to make or a new flower bed, you can go to the store, like Lowe's or any of the farm stores, and buy stuff that's called sphagnum peat. And you mix that into your soil really good, and it will help to make the soil easier to drain. It lets the water go through it. It adds more air to it and a little bit more organic matter, and it's healthier for the plant then too. So a lot of these are made with organic matter in them and a lot of soil lists. So there's no actual clay or soil from the yard or the ground into the soilless mixes that you use in your pots when you're potting flowers or in the bedding plants and the vegetables that you buy. This is sphagnum peat, vermiculite, and sometimes perlite. And those are all naturally occurring substances that are found in the earth in different places. Most of the sphagnum peat comes from Canada, and it holds a lot of water and it lets the roots breathe. See how healthy these roots are? See, they're nice and white. You want the roots on any of the plants that you grow to be nice and white like this. So if you're overwatering something, it will wilt too, and it'll look like it needs more water, but it's actually the roots are dying. And if the roots are sitting in water all the time, it'll kill the top of the plant and it'll wilt. So you keep watering thinking that it's dry, but actually it's overwater. So you always want to use your finger when you're testing for moisture in your plants. You want to just push your finger on here. And if it feels damp, it probably doesn't need water. Now in a garden, if it's in the soil, a good rule of thumb is an inch of water a week. So last night at our house, the night before last night at our house in Wheelersburg, it rained about an inch. And I have a bucket or a rain gauge outside that I can measure how much rain. So if I know that the plant got about an inch of water, they probably in the garden don't need watered again till maybe later in the week. And that depends on how hot it is. It's supposed to rain again maybe tonight or tomorrow. So sometimes in the garden, you don't have to water that often because the rain waters for you. But when you're doing potted things, like your potted mixed baskets of flowers, like this is, Melanie and I potted this up probably about 2 weeks ago now with different flowers. And some of these need pinched. It's kind of hard to tell because we're too far away. And some of these, like this especially, this is called a forget-me-not. It needs all these dead flowers taken off so that it'll continue to flower. But you will use your finger in here. And anytime you water something with the container, you want to make sure it has holes in the bottom, and you want to water it till the water starts to come out the bottom. Okay? Yes. Christy, is that my time already?
You have 2 minutes, about 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Any more questions in the book that you guys haven't done yet? That you have questions? You have to unmute if you have a question. If you guys ever have questions about your gardening project, you can contact your 4-H agent and they can get in touch with me, and you can email me, or we can do a video chat or something with your parents, and you can show me what the problem is or other questions that you have. So if you're getting ready for your judging, obviously we talked about this earlier, you want to complete your book and do the activities, but while you're doing that, make sure you take pictures. Because especially if you have to do a virtual judging, if you have pictures that you can show when you are writing stuff, when did you plant your tomatoes? Are you getting anything off of them? What kind are they? Pictures of you hoeing, pictures of you transplanting your vegetables or cutting flowers, or maybe you're doing a community service project, taking some of your extra flowers to people who are shut in at home, or maybe a nursing home donating stuff to them. Take some pictures of that and include that in your notebook that you're making for your judging. All right, the rocket question. Did I help you at all yet? What was your question, Jacob, about your rocket project?
You couldn't figure out what to make the cone out of.
Oh, the cone.
We used cardstock with multiple layers of cardstock.
We used cardstock when my children did the rocket project. That's like really thick paper that you can use in your printer.
But we doubled it before.
But we made it like double to make it work.
Poster board.
Or poster board works too. Or really thick scrapbooking paper.
Scrapbook.
And we actually.
What?
Like a book.
Well, book paper is a little thicker than notebook paper.
We actually.
Cardstock is pretty thick. Something that'll hold up if it crashes too.
We also would duct tape the point so that it wouldn't smush it.
And we reinforced the point with some duct tape on the outside to make
like
it more sturdy, or even popsicle sticks.
Okay.
To make it more rigid.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, and then
like the rocket project, that was a fun one.
we're having fun with it. And then do we do like a poster board with like the pictures of us?
Yeah, depending on
doing
your
some
county.
of the experiments and talks about it? Or this is our first year in 4-H.
Any 4-H project you do, you need to document with pictures, either on a half poster sheet or in a scrapbooky kind of notebook or anything like that.
Okay.
And always put down what you've learned. Because when you get older, you will need that information. It's very helpful for what you did, what you learned, what other experiences when you're filling out scholarships.